everybody. My name is Kim White, and I want to welcome you today to Running to Win. We have been doing this program now for about almost 8 or 9 months now. And back in the very beginning, I had a wonderful guest on. I think he was my second guest that I had on my program, and we did a few programs. And I'm going to have him coming back on today. But before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about the platform I'm on. This platform is called Kingdom First TV. Now, up in the right-hand screen, you might see a little icon there. You can find Kingdom First TV on a website, which is www.love-unity.org. And you can also go to Facebook and you'll find Kingdom First TV there as well. So be sure to check out the other programs and all of the different aspects of the gospel that's being preached throughout the world right now through Kingdom First TV. I'm thankful to Love and Unity Movement California, the visionary Apostle Eddie Maestas, for the opportunity that he has given me to be part of this platform. And also, when you're on that website that I mentioned earlier, be sure to check out Love and Unity and see what that ministry is all about. It's a ministry that's going all over the world, connecting people in ministry together, connecting people who are just serving the Lord together, and to give us a better understanding of God's plan in this hour. Now, before I go any further, I just want to bring my guest on today. And this is somebody who is very, very dear to me. His name is Apostle Michael Fram. Let me tell you a little bit about him as he's coming on. He is a teacher. He is a preacher. He is a trainer, and he is a mentor. I am blessed to have him in my life as a mentor. And even in the short time that we've known each other, he has spoken many truths to my life. He's told me things about myself I don't know or didn't want to know sometimes. And he's just been a huge blessing in my life. He's also a writer. He has several books that he's published, and I'll get him in one of these next three programs that he's going to be on to talk a little bit about the books that he's writing and where you can find them. He's a dynamic, anointed speaker. And in his spare time, which we wouldn't really know what that would be, he is also a salesman. And apparently, from what I've heard, although I haven't tasted it, he is one heck of a cook. So we are going to welcome Apostle Michael. It's a joy always to have you on here. And I just want to mention as well, before you get started, he is also the founder and minister at Prophetic Destiny Ministries International. And maybe Apostle Michael, you can give that website at some point if you like, and they can kind of look you up a little bit more there. Most importantly, he is also a member of the Senior Council of Love and Unity, which I mentioned also is the platform for this broadcast. So we welcome you, Apostle Michael. Now today, I know it's hard for people to believe, but I'm not going to talk much, although I've probably done a pretty good job so far. But we are talking about a subject. We are talking about a subject which is very important. I believe this in this day and age. I believe God is connecting people. Some people he's just connecting his relationships. Some people he's connecting people. It's just kind of a brother sister kind of thing. But there are relationships in our lives that God is putting there because he wants to show his heart to us. And he shows his heart to us through other people. And if I've ever met anybody who has the heart of a father, it is Apostle Michael. And so when I was thinking about doing this subject, there was nobody else I could think of who to have come on and teach on the subject. So I am going to quiet down here, calm down, grab my pen and take notes, which I suggest you do too as well if you're listening. And I'm going to let you go ahead, Apostle Michael. Welcome.
Well, thank you, my dear, for having me on your broadcast. Again, it's a privilege and an honor to be with you. And anytime I'm on Kingdom First TV, it's always a blessing. And I do so appreciate Love and Unity and all that Love and Unity is doing. And I've been telling people of late, there are several decisions that you can make in your life that really impact your future. Obviously, getting born again is one. Getting filled with the Holy Ghost is another. They're kind of like the constants. But then I've had others at different seasons of my life were the next most important decision. When I went to Rhema and sat at Dad Hagen's feet for the 2 years that I was in Rhema, that was a biggie. working with and for Billy Joe Doherty when I was still living in Tulsa after I graduated from Rhema. That was a biggie. Um, Being mentored by Dr. Mike Brown, well, from Strength and Wisdom Ministries, has been a biggie for me. He's been a great wisdom voice, wisdom mentor within my life. Obviously, my mom and dad have just poured so much into me and still do. But I've been telling people of late that becoming part of Love and Unity and being a part of the senior council has really become like the third most important thing at this season of my life that I could do after getting saved and getting filled with the Spirit. And I feel that strongly about it. And Joe Henry, probably, he's our producer behind the scenes. He knows my website and all that stuff, and he can probably just pull it up and flash it across. See, and presto, there it is. So I don't have.
I want a website. I want a website so I can see that happen. That's cool.
Joe Henry's the man. He's on it. So he can do all that. He can put all that up there and people can just see that. But, I really don't want to teach and I don't really want to preach. I kind of want to talk from my heart a little bit today. And I've mentioned this before, and I do have a book that is out. It came out last year that really deals with this subject. And it was kind of a snapshot into my life story. And the book was called From Father to Son. And it's about how my father poured into me when I was growing up. And he was preparing me for what was ahead of me, even when I didn't know what was ahead of me. I remember when I was 17 years old, I went to my father and I said, Dad, I believe I'm called to preach. And he just looked at me with this really wry grin on his face. And then he said, well, it's about time you figured it out. And, totally in disbelief, I just looked at him and I said, you mean you knew? And he just smirked and said, well, sure. And I said, well, how long have you known? And he said, oh, since you were 5. I'm 17 years old at this point, and, that means it's been quite a few years that he's known, and he's never said anything to me. He let me kind of figure it out and come to it on my own. And then in retrospect, I began to look at some of the things that he would say to me that didn't register at all in my mind or in my heart that he knew. But he would say things to me like, well, son, I won't be mad if you're not a preacher, but I will give you every opportunity that you want to be one. That didn't make any sense to me. It was just a comment that went by that I really didn't pay attention to. And then another time he said to me, well, son, listen, when you're talking to people, and when you're sharing things with people, I want you to do it like this. This is the way I want you to explain it. And I would be like, yeah, okay, Dad, whatever. It didn't dawn on me at that point that I'm going to be doing one day what he's doing. He knew it. He saw it, but he didn't tell me. He was like a guy dropping breadcrumbs, leaving a trail for me to follow and paving a way for me. And, it just didn't dawn on me. And then one day he said to me, son, when you're speaking, when you're teaching people, make sure you always use the KISS policy. And I'm like, Dad, what's the KISS policy? And he said, keep it simple, stupid. He said, there's no point in speaking where you're way over people's heads. You've got to break it down, even if it's deep theological thoughts and big theological words. You've got to always break it down so that everybody knows what you're talking about. There's no point in being miles over their head. So keep it simple. And I was like, okay, Dad. And it was like a mental note. But again, it did not dawn on me that he was preparing me for where I was going. And then I started teaching and started preaching about that point, 17 years of age. And he lived up to his word. He gave me opportunities. And the first message I ever preached, we used to go to Macaulay Water Street Mission in Lower Manhattan, right just a block or two from Chinatown and from Little Italy, down in Lower Manhattan in New York City. It was really a city block or two from the Tombs, which was a huge penitentiary, state penitentiary that was in Manhattan. And that was a place where the bums, the alcoholics, the drug addicts, the people that lived on the street, they could come in, they could get a hot meal, they could get a bed for the night, they could get a shower, and they would take their clothes and put them through a decontamination chamber to kill anything that was in them, and then give them their clothes back. And they also had clothes at the mission that they would give them new clothes if they wanted them. The catch was they had to sit through a chapel service first. Now, really, all they wanted was the meal and the bed. A lot of them didn't even care about the shower or new clothes, especially in the wintertime. You always had a big crowd in the wintertime because it gets cold living on the street. And so they wanted to come in, get out of the cold, have a hot meal, which was usually some sort of a soup and bread and butter and, you know, hot coffee or hot chocolate, whatever. They could warm up, but they had to sit through the chapel service first. And so the first night that I'm going to preach at the rescue mission in New York City, we had a landslide. And a landslide at a rescue mission is like 4 people come forward and give their life to Christ, because they really don't want to hear what you got to say. They want the meal, then they want the bed. And so my dad said to me, and I almost felt like it was out of the song New York, New York. You know, and the big line in New York, New York is, if you can make it there, you'll make it anywhere. And that's kind of what it was like at this rescue mission. If you can make it there, you're called. You can make it anywhere. And that was my training ground to preach. And so my first time out of the blocks, 4 people came forward and gave their life to Christ. And Dad said, son, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. You're called to preach. And so, you know, he had poured all these things into my life. And then a few years later, I get married. And my wife and I, my brand new wife, we're driving across country, and we're going to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was 20 years old. My wife was 18 years old. We packed up the money from our wedding, and I was driving at the time a 1972 Chevy Nova. And we had the money from our wedding. We had our clothes, our belongings, and that was it. And we headed out on blind faith, dumb luck, and young love to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And in driving across the country, we made a detour up into Michigan, where my older sister was living at the time. And we spent a few days with them as a detour on our way down to Tulsa from New Jersey. And I get to the church with her, and her pastor, who just went home to be with the Lord, our families, this pastor and his family and my family have been intertwined for over 40 years. And Papa Dorn just went home to be with the Lord. His son, Tim, I'm still friends with on Facebook, and I still interact with him. And he's really carrying on much of the legacy of his father's ministry in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And so the first time that I'm there in Papa Dorn's church in Michigan, he calls me out and he begins to prophesy to me. And one of the things that he said to me was that your parents are blazing a trail that you yourself are going to walk. And it really didn't take on meaning to me. It was just another piece to the puzzle that God gives us a lot of times hints. And it was those breadcrumbs that get dropped. It was another breadcrumb that got dropped. And he said, your parents are blazing a trail that you yourself are going to walk. And he began to talk about things that would happen in my life and in my ministry. And it took 10 years before any of those things became a reality. And sometimes people think, oh, I got a word from God and it's going to happen next week. It took 10 years for what Papa Dorn prophesied to me in 1982. It didn't begin to really manifest till 1992 when I moved back to New Jersey. But let me fast forward a few years in my life. It was 2015, the fall of 2015, and my life and ministry were forever altered and dramatically changed. And I wish I would have documented what day it was. I didn't. I wish to God I did, so I can't tell you. All I know is it was the fall of 2015. And I heard one sentence from the Lord. And one sentence forever changed my life. This is what the Lord said to me. It is time for you to do for others what Leo did for you. Now, Leo is my father. Thank God my father is still with me. My dad is 85 and my mom is 83. And they are both still actively teaching and preaching the Word of God. In fact, this past Sunday, we just had a multiple family dinner celebration. My wife and I were celebrating our 41st wedding anniversary. My son, we were celebrating his 19th birthday. And it happened to be Grandparents' Day, all at the same time. And so we had this celebration, my 85-year-old dad and my 83-year-old mom. And all my life, they poured into me. And so for God to say to me, it is time for you to do for others what Leo, your father, did for you. I knew what that meant because I knew what my father did for me. I knew how he took me under his wing. I knew how he poured into me. I knew how he mentored me. I knew how he dropped hints to me through the years without telling me what I was called to do. Just by saying things like, now, son, when you're speaking, use the KISS policy. It didn't mean anything when he said it, but later on, when I began to teach and began to preach, it took on meaning. It was one of those breadcrumbs that were dropped on the path to my destiny. Dad was great at that, letting me come to things on my own. And I remember years later, it was around the year 2000, and I went to my dad, and I had been operating since I was 17 up until this point around the year 2000. I tell people now I was a screaming evangelist. And people say, well, you still scream. Well, yeah, I do. But that's not my sole function anymore. And I can still scream and I can still preach and I can still shout. Absolutely. It's part of my makeup. And as my dad one time said, when God changes your function or your office, you don't lose what you had. Mm-hmm. He just adds to what you have. And now you have more to serve God with. Mm-hmm. And so I'm around 2000 and I go to my dad, and it was almost like Yogi Berra used to say, it was deja vu all over again. It was almost deja vu all over again. And I go to my dad and I say, Dad, I believe that God is changing my office from evangelist to prophet. And the same stupid wry grin that was on his face when I was 17 years old. And I said, Dad, I believe I'm called to preach. That stupid grin came on his face again in 2000. Dad, I believe God is changing my office from evangelist to prophet. Same stupid grin. And he says, well, and yes, you guessed it. He said, it's about time you figured it out. And so again, deja vu, I say, you mean you knew? And of course, Dad says, well, sure. And so I say to him, well, how long have you known? And he said, oh, about 5 years. Again, he knew where I was going, but yet he didn't say anything to me. He just continued to point me in the direction of where I was going. And so I began to think at this point, God's telling me, do for others what Leo did for you. Well, I know what Leo did for me. He dropped breadcrumbs. He dropped hints along the way. But he poured into my life and he mentored me. He opened doors for me. He clarified things for me all during my formative years. I knew what he did for me. And sometimes people get mad at me. Some of my spiritual kids will say, you know, Pops knows stuff, but he don't say nothing. Well, where do you think I got that from? And sometimes they want me to tell everything that I know. But the instruction that the Lord gave to me was do for others what Leo did for you. Well, Leo never told me what he knew. He dropped hints. He pointed me in the right direction. He poured into me. He prepared me, but he never told me. He never said, son, you're called to preach. He never said, son, you know, you all need to think about God's going to change your office and change your fund. He never did that. He let me figure it out on my own and then confirmed to me what I was sensing, telling me, yeah, I already saw this coming. I knew it. And so people get mad at me now because I don't tell them what I see and what I know. Well, don't get mad at me. God said, do for others what Leo did. Well, I know what Leo did. So the only pattern that I have to walk in was the pattern that Leo laid down for me. And so now I do what Leo did. If you don't like the way I mentor and you don't like the way I father, your beef is not with me. Your beef is with God, who told me do for others what Leo did, and with Leo, who did what he did for me, because I'm just obeying God. And even as Paul stood before King Agrippa and he said, "O King, I have not been disobedient to the heavenly vision. I can promise you without a shadow of a doubt, I have not been disobedient to the heavenly vision. And I am doing for others and pouring into others exactly the same way that Leo poured into me. I don't tell everything I know. I drop hints. I pour into people. And yet, and when the time is right, and I can confirm to them what they are coming to on their own, then I have the privilege and the honor to confirm many times what I have known and seen for years, but it wasn't time to release it. And I'm going to stop right there for today because I want to go into a whole nother section in our broadcast for next week that we go deeper into this subject of a father's heart. And I want to talk in the next phase of what happened when God said that to me in the fall of 2015 and what else happened that dramatically changed my life. My dear, I turn it back to you.
Wow, man, I'm just thinking as I'm listening to this about the amazing just the amazing relationship of father and son, and everything, and how the whole time he just saw it all and was just guiding you by almost not saying anything. You know what I mean? It was just it's precious. I think it's just such a precious relationship, and especially maybe even a little bit more so when it's your earthly father as well. And he just kind of stepped in there. So praise the Lord for that. And I'm excited about the next two. This is gonna be a 3-part series. So I'm excited about how far where Apostle Michael is gonna take this little series and everything, and the things that he's gonna share. And you might be listening and you might just think, I know I have a call of God on my life, but I don't know what to do, and I don't know where to turn, and I don't know where to get connected, and I don't know. Um, I just don't know. You know, um, I'm not going to connect you specifically to a spiritual father, but I am going to connect you to a place where I believe that if you can begin to make some relationships and connections, that you'll kind of see God maybe speak into your life a little bit. And so, Apostle Michael, I just want you to take a moment and just give the details for where they can go to love and unity. Would you do that for us?
Absolutely. Love and Unity can be found at love-unity.org. I am a member of the Senior Council. I serve with 10 others. There are 11 Senior Council members right now, seasoned fathers that really pour into another generation to help raise up a generation. There is a corporate father really operating through Love and Unity. And there are Zoom meetings for fivefold and for up and coming fivefold
Mm-hmm.
that you can be a part of throughout the week, Monday through Friday. The full schedule of those Zoom meetings is on the website. Again, it's love-unity.org. There's one on Monday that happens at 11 o'clock Eastern. There's one on Tuesday that happens at 10:30 Eastern. There's one on Tuesday night that is for Canada. A lot of folks from the States also go on, but it's at 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday nights. There's one on Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern. There is one on Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And then there's one on Friday that happens at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And the newest one we have is the Philippines, and that happens now at 9 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time on Thursday morning, and that's actually at 9 o'clock at night in the Philippines. So that's all the Zooms that there are, the full schedule, all the meeting IDs and passcodes are on the Love and Unity website, and we invite you to come and be a part of any of those, and maybe you can get connected to a corporate father through Love and Unity, and perhaps find an individual spiritual father as well.
Amen. I know for sure one thing, you'll find the nicest people that you will ever meet in the world there. That has been a great spot for me to join, to come in a time in my life when I was at a very difficult place. And it's been life changing for me. So I fully recommend it. Just before we go, I want to mention if you are in the Toronto, Ontario area, or maybe not too far away from the border or anything, I do want to mention to you that we are having our first Love and Unity Convergence in Canada. And that is going to be coming up. Oh my goodness. The dates are the 29th and 30th of September. It will be at the Doubletree Hilton near Pearson International Airport. If you go to the same website that we've mentioned several times now throughout the program, you will see that there is a kind of a poster there with a Canadian flag on it. You'll see all the details for that there, where to register. It's a free conference. And this will be a time for you to be able to come and be ministered to by word and by seasoned leaders and spiritual fathers and people who have been doing this for a long time. I fully and